Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today we're going to teach more from His Word of Truth, His Torah, which embodies His instructions, guidance, and teachings, those perfect commandments, showing us the direction we were to walk in, that narrow path, that difficult road we are to find. And He has given us the light that shines in this darkness. We are to earn the right back to the kingdom, the true promised land, which is in paradise. Let's read Revelations chapter 2 verse 7. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Ruach says to the assemblies. To him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Elohim. Now notice we are to have ears, and we are to hear what the Ruach says to the assembly, meaning the Spirit. And we are to overcome. And notice, it is the Spirit who gives us the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of paradise of Elohim. Now, we will discuss why Yeshua, when asked about what is the greatest commandment, he separated his response into two commandments, two divisions, and we'll discover what these are about, and observe that it was Yeshua who quoted verbatim from the Torah of Moshe, and he repeated the very words his Father commanded us from the beginning. Those were the Father's commandments, the Creator. Two, you'll discover why Yeshua responded and how he responded, which was in wisdom, knowing that love is the keeping of the commandments. And we will explore this love that it speaks of in the Word, and where this love comes from. And finally, you will learn that these fruits come from the Spirit of wisdom, who is the mother of them all. Now join me as we delve deeper into these mysteries in His Word, because the Word of Elohim is Spirit and life. John chapter 6 verse 63. We will begin with the question that was asked of Yeshua by one of the rabbis. Which is the greatest commandment in the Torah? And I want us to observe that Yeshua responded to them in wisdom. And remember that the rabbis, well, they are the teachers of the Torah, the very ones who studied the Torah and understood these matters, especially concerning the greatest commandment, which is to love. Well, we have these accounts recorded in Mark chapter 12 verse 28 and Matthew chapter 22 36, but we're going to read the account in Mark chapter 12. Let's begin in verse 28. One of the rabbis of the Torah came and heard them debating. Noticing that Yeshua had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? And in verse 29, the most important one answered, Yeshua is this. And let's observe something quite important here. Yeshua is quoting verbatim from Deuteronomy chapter 6. He stated, Shema Yisrael, Yehovah our Elohim, Yehovah is one. And that Hebrew word is Echad, and it means one or united. Right? And then we're going to read in verse 30. Love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Well, we see that Yeshua is quoting the very words that his Father commanded from the very beginning. And he made this distinction between the two commandments. The commandments, he broke them up into two. And the first one had to do with love the Creator and keeping these commandments. Another thing we should observe, this is the very commandment the Creator gave after he gave his 10 commandments to the Israelite. This was the very famous Shema, hear Israel, Yehovah. And we're to listen and we're to obey. And in verse 31 it says, the second is like this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Well said, Rabbi, the man replied, you are right in saying that Elohim is one, and there is no other but him. And in verse 33, to love him with all your heart and with all your understanding and with all your strength and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. So you see, the rabbi understood and he responded. And we'll read what Yeshua stated in the next verse. But let's read something quite important here. To love the Creator with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself, right, is more important than what? Burnt offerings and sacrifices. Because these are the fulfillment of the law we should love. And in verse 34 it says, when Yeshua saw that he had answered, and notice this, wisely, he said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of Elohim. And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. And this is beautiful because what we observe here is that this is not a new commandment. It's a commandment that we've had from the beginning. And they were the Father's commandments. And we have them in two different accounts in Devarim, or the words, Deuteronomy chapter 6. And it talks about just after the Father gave his 10 commandments. And also the commandments towards our neighbors. This is spoken in Leviticus, Vayikra, in chapter 19, verse 18. And we notice that he separated these two, meaning the commandment towards the Creator and the commandment towards our neighbor. And John 14 concludes with this. It says in verse 15, if you love me, you would keep my commandments. Now, we will discuss something quite deep and profound here, and I want us to observe the division of the commandments. Now, these are the very two commandments that Yeshua quoted, and he said that the keeping of these commandments, he said that all the Torah and the prophets hang upon them, and this is love. And I want us to observe that there were two tablets of the testimony. And we see that the law is summarized into two commandments, and it has to do with this love. And we're going to look a little bit deeper where this love comes from, and this is quite important. And let's observe also that there is a division between heavenly and earthly things. And if we think about this scenario here, well, this is quite important because context is key. And this is just after, all right, the Creator had given his statutes, his judgments, and his 10 commandments. Now this was in chapter 5 of Deuteronomy, or Devarim, which means the words. And he commanded them to be careful and to keep all these things. And he told them to hear and to listen. And that's important, the listening and obeying of this. And then he told them in Hebrew to love the Aleph and the Tav, Yehovah, the Creator, with all their hearts, minds, and strength. And that's Devarim chapter 6, verse 5. And we see this is quite deep, really, because Yeshua was speaking in wisdom, because he understood that love is the keeping of the commandments. Now, we can see here on, we've got the 10 commandments listed, and I've separated them here. We notice that these 5 on the left we'll talk about here in a moment, and we've got 5 on the right here. And these are the covenant conditions, and they're written personally by the Creator. And let's observe something here, which is quite deep, really. We take the first commandment, for example, you shall have no other Elohim before me. Now, when we consider that the watchers descended upon the earth, and they had leaders, and they disobeyed heavenly orders. And we see that they were worshipped, and they were served upon the earth. And as a matter of fact, the Creator said, you are not to follow or bow down to the other Elohim around you. And I'll show you what verse that speaks about. But we also see in like manner, right, when Hasatan was tempting Yeshua. What did he say? Well, he stated that all the kingdoms of the earth were under his dominion. And he said, if you bow down and serve me, I will give them to you. So you see, that would be a direct transgression of that very first commandment. And it had to do with serving other Elohim that we're about. And we see in like manner this second commandment, right? We can see that this was the knowledge that the watchers had, since they came from there in the first place. And you notice, it talks about in the heavens above, the earth beneath, and the waters below. Well, they are the very dominions where so much intrigue and mystery and secrecy is surrounding. Okay, so we can see that these are directly related to the works of the fallen ones. And also in the commandment 3 there, we can see you shall not take the name of Yehovah, your Elohim, in vain. And this is also spoken of in Enoch, where one of the angels requested Michael to show him the secret hidden name that he might enunciate it in an oath. And we know, according to Jubilees, it was the angels who kept the Sabbath. It was meant for angels. And we see they didn't keep these matters either. And then finally we get to honor your father and your mother. Well, they were called in Genesis 6:3 the Benai Elohim. So the father was Yehovah, and the mother is the Ruach HaKodesh, wisdom. So you see, honor your father and mother. Well, there is a likeness of the things that are in the heavens upon the earth. And this is quite deep as well. Now, we, in like manner, we have a heavenly father and a heavenly mother, and we have an earthly father and mother. And remembers, it states in Romans 8:5, for you have not received a spirit of slavery leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry out. And for all those who are born again, we are born of the Spirit, meaning the Spirit is our mother, our heavenly mother, wisdom. And that's quite deep. Now, over here on the right, we can see Leviticus. Yeshua quoted Leviticus 19:80. And what's the state there? Well, it says, do not seek revenge or bear grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yehovah. So you see, when Yeshua quoted these very commandments, he was reiterating the very commandment we had from the beginning that a father had given to them. And we see there's this division also between these commandments and their multi-dimensional nature. Let's look deeper into this love that Yeshua and his Father is speaking of. Now, his word describes this beautifully in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We'll read verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Now, these are exactly the qualities Yeshua demonstrated to his brothers and sisters. And we see that this love is deep and has many qualities that make it desirable fruit to be upon the trees. And we see there are 9 attributes described here, such as patience, meaning tolerable, long-suffering, doesn't get easily angered or anxious, and is kind, generous, and helpful, and considerate towards other people's feelings. And of course, it does not envy or boast. And these are qualities that the Creator detests, such as being resentful towards other people's possessions or qualities, or excessive pride about one's own achievements or their qualities. And of course, it does not dishonor, bring shame or disgrace on other people. And it's not self-seeking, having only interest in one's own welfare above the interests of the others. And of course, not easily angered, meaning does not get offended or irritable towards other people or rude. And of course, one of my favorites, he keeps no records of wrongs. So we see, and we should ask ourselves, brother and sisters, do we keep records of wrongs? Do we have a list? Do we hold grudges? Do we ever forget? Because you see, this love does not keep records of wrongs. And this is the standard by which we are to be measured So let's make every effort to grow in these areas. Now we'll continue from verse 7. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And in verse 8, love never fails. For where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. But love remains forever. We see that this love is truly faithful, reliable. It never gives up. It never fails. It perseveres. And what we should observe is that this love comes as a fruit of the Spirit. And remember that the Creator has planted His Word within us. And remember, His Word is Spirit. And it was to grow and produce these fruits. The Creator has given us many parables, and He has told us to listen and to hear these things. And we'll see that not all seed will grow, but only some seed fell on good soil, remember? And it came up and yielded a crop 100 times more than what is sown. It's spoken of in Luke and several other places, Matthew as well, about the seed, the word, which is Spirit, is to grow. Now I want us to read along with these verses in Galatians chapter 5 verse 22. And let's observe this fruit. We're told the fruit of the Spirit is love, ahava, joy, peace, shalom, long-suffering, generosity, acts of kindness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. And we're told against such things there is no commandments. Because you see, if we are living with these qualities, then we are perfect. Now, we're speaking here, of course, about the fruits of the Spirit and this love that we're commanded to have. And it is to produce these qualities in us. And we see at the end of the age, there's going to be the harvest. And we're told there are these fruits that are going to be upon the trees. Now, we'll look at where this fruit called love comes from. And let's not forget her many qualities which we saw earlier. Please pay attention as we'll let wisdom reveal this to us. And we'll begin within the pages of Sirach, chapter 24. Now, Sirach is wisdom literature, and it's very old, and originally written in Hebrew. And it's considered a part of the Apocrypha. Now, let's understand the meaning of the word Apocrypha. It means to hide away. And before we read this book, I want us to go back to Ezra, 2nd Ezra, chapter 14. And this is an account where they were told to write for 40 days, and Elohim Most High said that you are to make public the first 24 books that you wrote, so that everyone, whether you are worthy or not, you may read them. But then he told them the last 70 books that you wrote are to be held back and given only to those who are wise among your people. Now notice that these books were held back and they were to be given to the wise among the people, meaning they are wisdom. So let's not be like the foolish, but be wise and recognize the power of wisdom. Now, we're going to read in verse 1 of Sirach 24. It states, "Wisdom shall praise herself and shall glory in the midst of her people." So you see, wisdom has her own people, and she will praise herself, meaning wisdom is very powerful. And in verse 3 it states, "I came out of the mouth of the Most High and covered the earth as a cloud." Now in the very beginning it says, the Spirit of Elohim hovered over the deep. Okay? And we'll notice that the world was created through wisdom, through the Spirit, and keep that in mind. And in verse 4 it states, "I dwelt in high places, and my throne is a cloudy pillar." I'm going to read from verse 18 now. "I am the mother of fair love." So you see that wisdom is the mother. So she is the mother of love, meaning love comes from wisdom. And this is what it states also, "and fear, and knowledge, and hope. And therefore, being eternal," meaning live forever. She is the tree of life to those who take hold of her. And it says, "I am given to all my children." So you see, wisdom has her own children. And listen, which are named of him. So the Creator is the one who gives wisdom to us. Remember that. And in verse 19 we read, it states, "Come unto me, all ye that be desirous of me, and listen, and fill yourselves with my fruits." So you see, wisdom has many fruits, and we are to fill ourselves with the fruits that come from wisdom. But this is what it states. Wisdom says to come unto me. But all ye that are what? Desirous of me. So we have to desire wisdom. It cannot be something that is forced. And notice that wisdom fills us with this fruit. Now, just let's not forget, brothers and sisters, that we are born again by the Spirit. Let's not forget, for those born again by the Spirit, which has everything to do with the adoption as sons to the Creator, who is our Father. And this birth is by our mother, the Ruach HaKodesh. In John chapter 3:6, it speaks of this. Flesh gives birth to flesh, and spirit gives birth to spirit. You must not be surprised that I have told you that all of you must be born again. I will discuss the fruits of the Spirit in more detail in my next teaching. For now, I will leave you with these words from the Master Yeshua, where he speaks about the children of wisdom. In Luke chapter 7, verse 33, it says, "For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is proved right by all her children." We can see that these words are deep, because people judge by outward appearance, but do not know or understand the ways of wisdom. Also in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 3, read this. "For I too was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother. Then he taught me, and he said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart, keep my commandments, and you will live." We will conclude with these final words, which are, note, prophetic in nature. You see, this love is far deeper and more profound. She is the fruit of wisdom, our mother, and she has many fruits which we are to fill ourselves with. Remember, to eat from the tree of life is immortality. Now let's not forget, we saw in Proverbs chapter 1 that wisdom has been crying out, and that no one has listened to her. She has stretched out her hand, but no one regarded. That's because people have not recognized wisdom and her power. Now this quote is very prophetic in nature when we think that it has been 2,000 years since our Messiah walked on the earth, and we can clearly see how far we are from the ways of wisdom, because mankind has become corrupted and defiled in the end. Then wisdom goes on to say in verse 28, "Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me." That means that the Spirit will withdraw from many in the end, because they have not listened to wisdom. And we also have this confirmation in these words in Matthew chapter 12, 42. "The queen of the south will rise at the judgment with this generation," meaning in the end, "and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now something greater than Solomon is here." You see, we are speaking of Yeshua, who is born of the virgin wisdom, the mother of us all. Thanks for watching, and please let's meditate on these really important words.